so that he could come over to the States and they can live there together happily ever after, right? But she doesn't even tell this man, oh, hey, I haven't even put in the paperwork yet, and I'm probably not going to. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl JD here, back with another video. So this one is probably going to be a little bit of a lengthy one because I kind of wanted to wrap up 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After in the first half of this video, and then the rest of the video we're going to be talking about 90 Day Fiancé The Other Way, which is one of the other spin-offs, and this is going to be season 4 for that spin-off, and it's been getting really interesting. So before I get into The Other Way, let's talk about Happily Ever After. So I already did part 1, 2, and 3, but there were 4 parts of the reunion for Happily Ever After, but I did say that I was going to try and do a video for each of them, and I kind of did, but the 4th one, I feel like there wasn't really much going on, and I didn't feel the need to do a whole video dedicated to it. So nonetheless, when it comes to Angela and Michael, you know, they're still working on their situation, but it looks as though Angela might be leaning towards a divorce. Who knows? But it sounds as though she's just trying to find herself and figure out what she wants to do for the time. Then we move on to Big Ed and Liz, and like I said in one of my past videos, they were actually spotted out together even though they were arguing, and it seems as though Ed had left Liz in the hotel without even saying bye to her. But I mean, she was kind of ignoring him, so he was just like, okay, I guess that's a sign that we're done, you know? They're back together, I guess, because they were spotted after the reunion holding hands and walking down the street together. And then we get to Andre and Libby. They had their kid shortly after that reunion wrapped, so congratulations to them. But of course, Libby's family, they still need to work out their issues with Andre. In terms of Kim and Usman, they're done, and it looks as though they're still done, so thank God. You know? But one thing I want to mention about that is that Kim had basically kind of talked to Jenny in the car ride or back to their hotel, I think, to get drinks and stuff, and she kind of came at Jenny and was like, hey, you didn't really have my back, like what was that about? Like, you basically said that Usman is really not interested in me, that type of way, and he just sees me as a friend. I guess she kind of took it that Jenny was trying to come at her a little bit and was basically downing her, I guess, but what she said was true. And also Shida had said the same thing. A couple of the other women had said the same thing about the situation. Yeah, it just was more of like a friendship that just happened to turn into a relationship, more than likely because Usman had felt a ways about her coming all the way to Nigeria to visit him and him not being able to offer her anything. So he just probably kind of felt cornered into that relationship. But apparently, according to Kim, you know, they're still kind of friends, but let's be real, I don't know about that. Also, I don't know if this is true or not, but it looks as though there might be pictures. I don't know what's going on here, but it looks as though Usman might have gotten married. I don't know. It's just very strange. I don't know. Some people saying that he was, some people saying the pictures are fake, but I don't know. I don't know. Y'all let me know in the comments. But Bilal and Shida, they were during the reunion talking about having a kid and all that, but we ended up finding out that after the reunion wrapped that unfortunately Shida did suffer a miscarriage, and she did share that over on her Instagram, and I really feel bad. I really did, because I really like Shida, and I'm starting to like Bilal too a little bit more, but every now and again he does and says things where I'm just like, Bilal, do better, you know what I mean? Jenny and Sumit, of course, they're still working on things with Sumit's family, so nothing much has changed there. And the last couple is Jovi and Yara, and Jovi does have a little bit of an argument with Yara. Yara's telling him to shut up, and it just seems like a very juvenile argument, just gonna be honest, because they're talking about, you know, Jovi's mom moving and all that stuff and yada yada. But anyways, so to wrap that up, I wish them all the best. But this next show, the 90 Day Fiancé The Other Way, definitely a lot crazier, if I'm going to be honest. Very interesting, to say the least. So our couples that we're going to be discussing in season 4, first we have Jen and Rishi, then we have Danielle and Johan, Chris and Jemmy, I think is how you say it. Jemai, I don't know. We're just gonna say Jemmy for now. Then we have Nicole and Mahood, and Gabriel and Isabel, and lastly is Debbie and Osama. So let's dive into it. I'm just gonna go in the order that I see on this website, the list of the cast. I think this is on the usmagazine.com. So let's talk about Jen and Rishi. So Rishi is from India, I believe Jaipur, India to be exact, and Jen, I forgot where in the state she's from. I can't remember. It probably was some Midwestern state, but don't quote me on that, okay? But either way, Jen, I think, found Rishi on a trip to India, which seems to be the going theme, really. Is either that or they found each other on the internet. That really seems to be the main ways that they meet these people. She was on a trip to India, I believe, and she ended up meeting up with Rishi. They start dating and also, I believe, got engaged shortly after knowing each other, which is wild. And we find out that the entire 2 years that Jen is over in the US waiting to come back over to India to move there, that Rishi still has not even told his family that he's even with somebody, let alone engaged to them. So Rishi's family don't know anything about Jen. However, Jen's family knows everything about Rishi. They even tried to trap him by doing like a cheating thing to see if Rishi would respond, and apparently he did. And it didn't seem like he said anything suspect. It just sounded like he said, hey. I don't know if the friend was maybe trying to test him as if she was like a potential client, because he is a trainer, a gym trainer. So obviously he's gonna have a lot of women and people trying to contact him for his services, if you know what I'm saying. But either way, Jen goes over to India and she is trying to figure out like, okay, I'm up in this apartment that, you know, Rishi found for her to stay in, but at the same time it was like, okay, when am I going to get introduced to your family again, and when are you going to tell them that we're engaged? So they end up having an argument about that, because it's like, how do you keep that from your peoples? And then we find out during the latest episode from, I think, one of Rishi's family members, I believe, or a friend, I can't remember, that apparently they were looking for a match for him, which we get to see throughout the episode, but they were trying to arrange a marriage for Rishi, and we find out that it had actually been going on for the last 2 years. Even in one of the episodes, the mom, Rishi's mom, had asked for him to meet up with one of the matches. Potentially. So it's just really crazy. I think Jen kind of storming off when they were looking for clothes to meet up with his family, that was kind of deserved a little bit, even though I felt like she overreacted ever so slightly with walking off without him in a country that you're not from, and you're a woman by yourself. I'm like, girl, if you don't go take yourself back to that man and let him escort you back to your apartment, at least, you know what I mean? Y'all don't have to be in the same house. Let him leave afterwards, but don't be going off like that. Like, are you crazy? So I can understand her frustration. Rishi, I think, is just trying to play it cool to kind of ease her into the family, but I think at this point, you just need to tell them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, rip the band-aid off, sir. So we're gonna move on to Danielle and Johan. So Danielle had actually came to the Dominican Republic where Johan lives, and he was actually working in the hotel that she was staying at during that trip, and they ended up meeting each other, hitting it off, and at some point or another they get engaged, and it looks as though they get married, because she comes back and, you know, they're already married. So I think within another 90-day fiance season they end up getting married, because I saw some footage from that. But Danielle was living in New York City, okay, for a time, and she was basically complaining to Johan every now and again about having to pay so much money to live there and how she wants to just move to the Dominican Republic. However, Johan, when Danielle comes over, is under the impression that they're just staying there until he can get his spousal visa so that he could come over to the States and they can live there together happily ever after, right? But she doesn't even tell this man, oh, hey, I haven't even put in the paperwork yet, and I'm probably not going to because I don't want to live over there anymore. But I'm thinking, if you want to escape all of these bills and having to pay so much money to live in New York City, why not just move out of New York City? As if the US isn't huge. It's a huge country. There's so much space, so many different states and cities that you could move to that would be a lot cheaper than New York City. Like, if you wanted to, you could have. You know what I'm saying? So it was just really kind of dumb to me. She's saying to him, you know, I kind of want to escape all that, and it's so much money to live there, yada yada. So he's just trying to kind of accept what she's saying, but he doesn't know that she's kind of lying to him. It's like she's starting the relationship off with a bang, really. So before she goes, however, and moves to the DR, we see that her friends, you know, are trying to convince her like, hey, you might want to reconsider what you're doing. Maybe you might want to stay a little bit longer, get some more money first. How are you also going to sustain your style of living and stuff while you're over there? What you gonna do for money? And she's just like, oh, you know, like I'll just be a yoga teacher online, because she had a yoga studio back in NYC. But it was like, sis, you need a little bit more than that. We find out that she actually gave up a possible increase in her pension if she had stayed for like just one more year, and she just decides, oh, I don't need the money is not important to me. That's pretty much what she said. And it was like, sis, the money is very important when you have a husband that works in the DR and doesn't really make nearly as much as you do. Like, it's very important. So it's very weird. And then also when they kind of interact with each other, when she's in the DR and he shows her his butcher shop, the business that he started, she kind of comes at him a little bit, because he's just like, why don't you have a refrigerator? Why do you not have a computer or a laptop to keep your business stuff in? And he's just like, why do I need all of this? If this is how I present, you know, the meat and stuff in the country, like that seems to be how other butchers sell their wares. And then on top of that, when it comes to his business just starting, he's not really making that much money. He's not really doing that much to begin with in terms of keeping track and records. He doesn't really need to keep track of that much stuff. Why does he need to invest in a computer right now? A notebook is good enough. So it was just really weird. I think she's just used to coming from US and having like a bigger business than he does, and a lot of things to remember. So obviously she needs the computer and the software and stuff. And it just felt like she was just kind of spitting on him a little bit, looking down on him for trying to actually do something with his life. Because the business just kind of started, he had to obviously put in his own money, invest money, and he's not really making much right now. She's just looking at that as, oh, you're in a deficit. You know, you need to get out the deficit. Like, you're losing money, yada, yada. And it's just like, you have your own business. You know good well what it takes to have a business. So why are you coming at him as though the business is always going to be in a deficit and it's never going to be making money? You know what I mean? So it was just really strange to me how she was acting. Really, I'm trying to find the word. Very uppity, very much so I'm looking down my nose at you type of way, like, you know, like you should do more. And it's just like, he lives in the DR, like there's not many opportunities. He's making some for himself, he's trying. So it just came across as really like diminishing in a way. It's like, dang, he's actually trying to do things for himself and you're not even giving him that credit. It was just wow, you know? But anyway, lastly, not only is Danielle lying to him about obviously the whole visa thing, but we find out that apparently she actually is running away from a lot of debt in the US. I think she has like maybe 30 or 40 something $1,000 of debt that's just sitting there that she hasn't really touched. So yeah, she hasn't dealt with it and he knows nothing about this either. And what I find crazy is that she's lying about all of this, but in the most recent episode that I saw of this show, she's getting mad at him because he didn't say that the girl that he was with, that he had a kid with, got rid of their child. He ended the pregnancy and she got mad that I guess Johan had shared that with her friend that came over to the DR to visit them and not with her first. Because apparently, I guess Johan at one point had said that I did get this girl pregnant that I was seeing. I think he said that she had actually lost the baby and had a miscarriage. However, it was a matter of her terminating the pregnancy. So that's really weird to me that you get mad about something like that when you're lying about other really important things, you know? So I think Danielle is definitely one of the biggest hypocrites that I've seen on this show. But moving on to Chris and Jemmye. So it is two women, okay? Lesbian love here. Chris and Jemmye, they have a very interesting relationship. It does look as though Chris, she's a little bit more uptight than Jemmye. It does seem like Jemmye is a little bit more free-spirited, kind of go with the flow type of person, but Chris does come with a little bit more baggage, to be fair, so I can kind of understand why she's a little bit more reserved. But Chris was actually married before to a man. I think it was once or twice. I can't remember. But anyways, she has 2 kids, I believe. Yeah, two kids, I think. She lives in Alabama, and you know, she always kind of felt the need to obviously fit in by not really sharing the fact that she was interested in women as well as men, I think. So she didn't really get to explore that living in a small town in Alabama. And she ended up finding Jemmy online, and they kind of hit it off. And it does look as though at one point they had some issues with infidelity, because Jemmy, I think, was talking to another person. But I think after Jemmy had gotten sick with COVID, Chris had decided to kind of fly over there to basically move and, you know, figure out their life together. Chris and Jemmy are now in Colombia, where Jemmy is from and where she's living currently. And it does look as though they have a lot to figure out, because Chris comes with some health issues, and also she has night terrors. She likes knives. There was a scene where they were looking at some knives, and Jemmy was just looking at Chris like, okay, I hope she doesn't make other people think that she's a psychopath, you know? They have a very interesting relationship. And then also they're in an apartment that Chris was supposed to be paying for. She was okay with paying all the bills, she says, but the apartment that Jemmy had found with all the things that Chris was asking for costed, I think, $100 more than what she was looking for. So she was kind of mad that Jemmy had just went ahead and signed and, you know, agreed to the lease without talking to her about it first. So I can understand how that could be a little problematic. However, you know, to make things a little bit better, Jemmy does say to Chris like, hey, you know, I could definitely go back to working. Right now I'm on a leave, you know, for 30 days. I have a little bit of vacation time, but I am definitely okay with going back to work and paying for the bills. So I think it's kind of silly a little bit that Chris knows that Jemmy does have a job and she's okay with going like almost 50-50 with her on the bills and the apartment and stuff, but she's still saying, no, I'll pay the bills, I'm okay with paying the bills. But she's complaining about the whole $100 extra apartment. So it was like, clearly y'all have some things y'all need to work out, because it just seems a little petty to me. If she's giving you a solution that she's okay with working, I don't see why this should still be a problem, you know? But moving on to Nicole and Mahood. Oh God. So Nicole decides she wants to go at random a little while ago. She decides to go on a tour, take a trip, go to Egypt. I think it was supposed to be some type of spiritual tour or something like that. And she ends up going into a market where she finds Mahood, and they just, you know, catch each other's eye. They start talking, they hit it off. And it looks as though at that same time, she actually gets engaged to him and they get married, okay? So she is moving really fast. I think this happened within a couple of months, actually, or maybe even a couple weeks, very, very quickly. I think she even said when she was meeting up with Mahood's friends, which was a very awkward encounter, but we'll get into that. She actually mentions that, you know, they kind of met each other, hit it off, dated for a little bit, got married within like a month. I think it was like 30 days, she said. So I think that's crazy. And it did seem like Mahood was a little embarrassed by that, because he was like, yeah, don't bring that up. But moving on. So after this, they end up kind of living together in Egypt for a little while, and Nicole pretty much decides she can't do it. So she moves back to the US, but she did still have a whole life in the US. It's not as though she was like all packed up and moved to Egypt. So she still had something to go back to, but then she eventually kind of reconciles with Mahood. They sort of kind of figure their issues out. When I say sort of kind of, like literally not really at all, because they still have a lot of problems that they argue about when she goes back to Egypt. So this time she decides to actually let go of everything, get rid of her apartment, move out, brings all her stuff over to Egypt, and decides to stick it out with Mahood, at least for the time being. And they're living in his mom's house, and she already remarks about the fact that there's so many kids in there. His brother lives in there with his wife, their kids, and then also his sister with her kids, her husband, and it's a lot, okay? So I I can understand, obviously, because it's Egypt, and in that part of the world, family is very important, and it's usually pretty much customary to kind of live with each other. So I think in the States and kind of like the Western world, it's a little more normal, more normalized to live by yourself and kind of have a house away from your family. However, when you go to certain countries, yeah, it is kind of weird when you do that. So he's just like, yeah, we're just gonna stay here because I don't know when or if you're going to try and leave me again. And he keeps bringing that up. As soon as she lands, he's already commenting obviously on her clothes, and that seemed to be another problem that they had, because before she left the first time, they kind of argued back and forth about her wearing the hijab, not wearing the hijab to cover her head, and then also wearing clothing that's a little bit more reserved and doesn't show too much. And you know, it's so interesting that she says she's interested in fashion and vintage clothes and stuff like that, but now you have to pretty much kind of cover all that up. So that's going to be a part of yourself that you're going to have to submerge, and I don't know how that's going to work, really. It's very interesting watching them trying to address the problems, because it does seem as though they argue quite a bit, and Mahood does seem like he's not interested in having any of those necessary conversations that is very important to Nicole. And I don't know how a relationship is going to work if you don't want to address your problems. You know what I'm saying? I understand you don't want to argue, however, it's important that you talk about it at least so you can figure some type of resolve out. So they keep bumping heads, they're having arguments, and just little spats here and there because of cultural differences. Like I said, she went to go meet up with Mahood's friends, but Mahood was trying to tell her like men and women don't really mix and mingle like that. So yeah, in the States, obviously that's very normal for you to meet your boyfriend or significant other or husband's friends, and where I'm from, the Bahamas, that's normal too. But clearly in Egypt, it's definitely different. So she is having a hard time understanding that, but he still obviously tries to invite his friends out, get her to meet them, and it's very awkward. I'm not gonna lie, she was so ready to leave after just a couple of questions, because it was really weird, because you could clearly tell that his friends were not used to that happening, but they were trying to invite it because she was American. So they were trying to get, I guess, an understanding of how she thinks of things and what is normal to her, you know what I mean? So they're trying to make her feel comfortable, but in the process they end up making her feel more uncomfortable. So they have a lot of things to work out. I thought was really interesting though that when she first landed and she got to meet up with his family again, they didn't hold anything against her. I thought that was nice, because obviously you see that she left the first time and it was because she couldn't really handle everything. So I'm happy that they didn't really bring that up. But at the same time, with regards to Mahood, he does joke about taking her passport so that she doesn't leave again. But it was like, why would you have to do that when she don't really even have a life to begin with if she does go back home? You know what I mean? Like, she gave up everything to come here and live with you. So that was really weird. Clearly he meant it as a joke and everybody laughed, but she, on her face, you could tell she was like, what the hell? Even I was like, what the hell, for a minute. I was like, what's going on? But moving on to our last two couples, we have Gabriel and Isabel. So Gabe met Isabel while he was traveling to Colombia for work. I think he was trying to get a supplier for his like underwear company, because he's trans and he does like underwear for trans women to men, for those who haven't had like bottom surgery yet. So they kind of have like a built-in, you know what, package basically. So that picked up for him. Obviously Isabel, she was acceptant of finding out that Gabe was trans, because she actually didn't know that at the time of them meeting and kind of hitting it off. So he wanted to make sure that she knew everything about him. And then he kind of moves over to Colombia, not kind of, he moves over to Colombia, and he's trying to now get everything set up with his business, and then also with regards to Isabel, you know, she has kids, so they're trying to integrate. The family seems to like him, but unfortunately Isabel's parents don't know as yet that he's trans, so that's another thing that's kind of looming over his head, and he's trying to figure out how to break that news, and also what he would do if they don't react well to finding out that he used to be a woman. You know, personally, I think that if Isabel is okay with it, more than likely the family is going to be okay with it too. But however, it is you know, something that is still kind of relatively new in terms of people knowing about. So when it comes to that, it might still be a little bit of an issue, but I'm hoping for the best for them because he already moved. And then on top of that, her kids are already, you know, accepting of him as their possible stepdad. And, you know, obviously Isabel is already okay with it. She knows. So they have some things they need to work out for sure, but I think it's going to work out. I think it's going to, because they seem to be very much so in love. So I'm happy for them. But we're going to move on to our last couple, Debbie and Osama. And oh my God, y'all. Debbie, I believe, is in her 60s and Osama is 20 something. And when I say 20 something, like an early 20 something, like 23, 24. He lives in Morocco. She's from Georgia, I believe. And I'm like, sis, her kids are even there telling her, this is not sounding like it's going to be a good idea, you moving over there for this young man. You meet online, red flag number one, and number two, like, literally, you are 3 times his age. I'm just saying, she tries to meet with like a lawyer before she leaves to kind of see if she could protect her things, like if they do get married and if there is a divorce situation, she's trying to protect herself and what she owns. However, it's like, come on. Like, you already know. Almost every video that I've watched of people reacting to this new 90 Day Fiancé Other Way season, they always say when it comes to this couple, it's not gonna last. Let's move on. They don't even say nothing else. It's not gonna last. Let's keep it pushing. If it does, that'll be the first time in a very long time that I've seen something like that actually like work out. I don't really have much to say. They just met. She just flew over there with some of her stuff. I think after she gets settled over there, you know, her son's gonna send the rest of her stuff. But I don't know about this. It just seems like a waste of time and a waste of an episode. It's really, even the lawyer looked at her like, you 3 times his age? Okay, ma'am. Okay. And she tries super hard to hide it, but very questionable indeed. I just hope that everything is secure on her end and everything that she was going to be leaving to her kids is all good and nothing happens to that. But it's like, really though? Really? But anyways, to wrap up this video, you know, all the couples seem pretty interesting, but I really don't think Debbie and Osama is gonna last, so I'm not even gonna bother really getting into their story. But they just met each other in person. She just landed in Morocco in the last episode that I saw, so I don't have much to say on them anyway. Gabriel and Isabel, not really that interesting to me. It doesn't really seem like they have that much to worry about. I think the most interesting couples for me are probably Nicole and Mahood, Danielle and Johan, and then Jen and Rishi. But I think Chris and Jemmy are kind of like right underneath those 3 in my opinion in terms of interest for me. But we're gonna see where these couples go and how this progresses, but it seems very interesting thus far. But y'all let me know your thoughts on all these couples and relationships and everything that's been going down as of late down in the comments. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.